Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Katerina or Kat if you're new here, and in today's video we are going to be doing the mid-year book tag, or also known as the mid-year book freakout tag. My brain just cannot wrap itself around the fact that we are almost halfway through the year. But anyways, I have a lot of books to talk to you about for what I've read halfway through this year. I have my favorite book, my least favorite book, some really great finds that I found this year. But also, let's start off specifically with stats. What I've read so far, what are my top genres so far this year, how many pages I've read. So far this year, I have actually read 45 books, which is honestly putting it to be the best reading year I have ever had. Even before I had my daughter, I have never had such a good reading year. Of reading those 45 books, I have also read 16,162 pages, which is actually means that this year I am going to surpass the amount of pages that I've read in any given year. On average, it's taken me about 4 days to finish a book, depending on the size of the book. The top genres that I have for this year are romance, fantasy, contemporary, and LGBT. My average rating so far has been a 3.93, which is actually pretty good for me. So my stats for this year is really impressive. As I said, it's probably the best reading year I have had in a very long time, and it comes down to quite a few things. The biggest is that I cherish my downtime because of the fact that 90% of my day is taking care of my 2-year-old, working, just doing the daily life necessities, that I do focus more on reading. But also I think it's helped that I've had just a daily minimum goal set of 5 pages for every single day, and because of that I have actually read every single day so far this year. So this year has just been a really great reading year, and I'm hoping that the second half of this year will be just as great. So I do have the questions for the mid-year book tag. I know that there's variations to the questions, but I think I did find the original questions. The first question is, best book you've read so far in 2026? And there is only one book that comes to mind that has literally topped every single book so far still this year. It's a 5-star read for me, and that is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my first TJR book. The way that she writes women and the way that she captures emotions and themes and love and family, I mean, this was absolutely stunning. It's one of the only books that has ever actually made me cry. What I really enjoyed about this one is the focus around women in STEM and the fact that women have to work 10 times harder than men in a STEM career because of the fact that we are seen as a weaker sex. We're seen as not capable of creating wonderful and amazing things and doing wonderful amazing things. You definitely see that in this book where you have men scoffing at these first women astronauts. If you have not read a TJR book, or if you're wanting to step outside of your comfort zone, highly recommend Atmosphere. Then of course, what is the worst book that I've read so far in 2026? And most of you might know it if you've watched my TBR cards picks the books that I read for the week. You will know that this book is in there, and that is The Dark Lord's Guide to Dating by Tiffany Hunt. This is probably the worst book that I've read so far this year. I ended up giving it, I believe, maybe a 2.5, 2-star, I can't remember. I've been trying to put this book outside of my mind. This was marketed as a darker, spicier version of the Assistant to the Villain series, and it failed on every single part. It was cringy, it was uncomfortable, the main characters, they were just big red flags, the both of them. And the male character, our male love interest, he was the biggest red flag that I've ever read in fantasy. He's the villain that you just don't want your main character to be with. Pretty much the villain kidnaps this woman from the hero's line to be able to unleash this almighty power. If you want to hear my deep thoughts, you can also watch my reading wrap up for May, because I do talk about this book, as well as the fact that I do talk a lot about this book in that TBR card video. There's my worst book for 2026. And then the next question is the best sequel that I've read so far in 2026, and there's one that I absolutely loved. It was amazing, it was wonderful, it wrapped up a trilogy that I was reading, and that was The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. This is the last book in the Mistborn trilogy, Era 1. This was the best final book in a series that I have read in a very long time. Brandon Sanderson does this very interesting thing where he's introducing you to new people and new concepts and new things, and you're like, but wait, this is the last book. But yet at the same time, he's able to wrap it all up in one nice big bow and present it to you and say, here's the ending, even though it was brutal and just gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching, and my heart was hurting for these characters through the trauma. It was just an amazing wrap-up to an amazing trilogy, and it's also like solidified my love for Brandon Sanderson's writing, and I cannot wait to pick up the Stormlight Archives. And then the next one is, what is the worst sequel that I've read so far this year? And there is one very mentionable one that I can think of, and that is Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I think I gave this one a 3-star, maybe a generous 3.5 star. This was awful. This was like the definition of second book syndrome. Everything that happened in powerless just disappeared for this book to exist, and it makes me not want to continue with the last book. Like, I just felt like this book didn't really do anything for our plot, and then the ending happened, and I know a lot of people were like, oh, Lauren Roberts left it on this really big cliffhanger, and she does, but it's not a cliffhanger that I care about. Like, I just don't care, and I think that that's my problem. And after reading this and feeling like there was nothing that was good that I read in Powerless, I just don't know. I don't know. It was just a really big disappointment for me this year, especially since I loved Powerless so much. So this is my worst sequel so far this year. And then the next question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. This next one actually is not yet out, and it will be releasing on June 16th. That is The Shrouded Queen, and this is by Ashley Tropea. If you know me, I've talked about it many times. I have a deep love for ancient Egypt. I mean, I have an entire Egyptian tattoo sleeve dedicated to ancient Egypt because I have such a deep love and appreciation for that culture, that history. And one of the things I've always loved is seeing fantasies that surround ancient Egypt and ancient Egyptian culture. So this is a slave and a princess switch places to survive, igniting parallel journeys of love and destiny. And so from my understanding, this fantasy not only takes from ancient Egypt, but it also takes from ancient Norse mythology as well. So very interesting combination. Our author is actually Italian Egyptian, so that will be interesting. I'm very excited about this one. And then the next question is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So I do have a few books that I'm really excited about. The first is The Adversary to the Villain. This is the fourth book to the Assistant to the Villain series. This releases on August 4th. This series is such a fun, cozy fantasy. It takes the Renaissance Festival and the cliches of fairy tales and creates this really fun, romantic fantasy that I think a lot of people would find things that they would really enjoy in it. It has very interesting characters. Another one that I'm really excited about reading that is going to be releasing October 6th of this year is The Witch by Frida McFadden. I have not read any Frida McFadden books. I do want to get into her books. I'm usually not a thriller reader. However, this one really sounded interesting to me because it sounds like our main character ends up going home, but she ends up uncovering a lot of truths, and apparently there were witches that potentially were murdered at the estate that she lives at or that her family owns and everything, and so it might be haunted. That sounds really interesting to me. I do love a little bit more paranormal aspect to the thrillers that I read, and so this I thought would be a really great opportunity for me to try Frida McFadden's. One mentionable one that is going to be releasing, I would say it's not releasing too far in the second half. It's actually being released on July 7th, and that is volume 6 of Heartstopper. I have waited a very long time for this final volume. This is the last volume that we're ever getting for Heartstopper, and it literally breaks my heart. But I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited to see where Nick and Charlie are going to end up, how that story is going to wrap up and everything. So yeah, so that is definitely an anticipated release of mine for the second half of the year, or the early second half of the year. Next question is the biggest surprise so far this year. This is one that I kind of didn't want to pick up because of the fact that I am not a sports romance person. I don't enjoy sports romances. I'm not a big romance reader in general, and so I just really wasn't going to read it. But then the hype got really big around a certain book, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna read it. Game Changers by Rachel Reed. I am only pulling this book out because of the fact that I don't want to get all 6 books, but I would just say in general, the Game Changer series was the biggest surprise for me. The biggest thing for this one was the fact that it is a sports romance, and I am not a fan of any sports romances whatsoever. I don't like sports romances. I'm usually not interested in them. I kind of avoid them, and so I was actually avoiding this series. I was like, I heard about it, and I'm like, oh, that's great. That sounds fine, I guess. And then I was like, you know what? I might as well pick it up and see what the hype is. And so I did pick up Game Changers first, and I was like, oh, this is, you know, not the best written thing, but it was actually kind of enjoyable. And then I picked up Heated Rivalry, and I was like, okay, I can see why people really like this. And then I picked up the rest of the series, and then I got to the long game, and I'm like, okay, I really enjoyed this. As I said, is it the best written series out there? Absolutely not. But was it a fun time? Yes, I was very surprised, and I'm very excited for Unraveled. And then the next one is a favorite new author debut or new to you. So this author is one that I've heard about, but I've actually never read any of their works. And then I actually did a Wheel Picks the Books That I Buy challenge, and I ended up picking up one of his books, and that is Recursion by Blake Crouch. This is a new to me author, even though I've heard of this This author, I've never read any of his books, and after reading Recursion, which I gave a 5-star, I am happy to say that I will be picking up Blake Crouch and the rest of his books, or any of the books that he has currently released. I've heard that Dark Matter is phenomenal. I've heard that Upgrade, I think is another book by him, is wonderful. This is definitely an author that I'm very excited about reading the rest of his works too. The next question is your newest fictional crush. Now, I had to really stop and think about this one because I feel like there's a lot of characters I really loved. I think that the best one that I've read so far is Aaron from the Jessed Crowns. So this is the second book in the Scorched Throne duology. The first book is the Jessed Heir, and I loved this duology. This was an amazing Egyptian inspired fantasy. What really stood out to me was the characters, and I would have to say that Aaron, the growth that he has, the trauma and the things that he has to work through and things that he has to do to protect the ones that he loves is just, it's heartbreaking. But watching him grow and watching him change and watching him question things around him really was so beautiful to watch, and I absolutely loved every single moment of his point of views. But I don't know if it's a crush, but more admiration for the things that he has to go through. Then the next question is a book that made me cry. Going back to obviously my favorite book of this year, Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the only book, like I said, to make me cry in a very, very long time. Like, the tears were ugly. That also leads me to the book that made me very happy, and that was The Book Witch by Meg Schaefer. This was such a fun, laid-back, cozy fantasy read that is the perfect book to read on like a rainy day or even a bright sunny day. Any kind of day would be perfect for this book, where you have book witches that are able to jump from book to book, that are going around saving the book from book burners, these villains that are trying to destroy the plots in books, and they're able to jump into their favorite books and save those plots and save those characters. However, there are a lot of rules to being a book witch, and of course our main character breaks one of the cardinal rules, which is do not fall in love with a fictional character. It was very fun. So getting close to the end here, the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. This one was another really hard one because after like looking at all the books that I've bought this year, I wouldn't say that there are any like overly pretty books. I think a lot of the books that I've gotten are sci-fi and fantasy, and they kind of just, you know, have the classic sci-fi and fantasy covers. But this one is actually, I think, really whimsical and pretty, and I enjoy the sprayed edge of it. The Field Guide for the Formerly Villainous. This is by Autumn K. England, and I just love a book that is whimsical and has these beautiful illustrations. It's different than most cozy fantasies, and so I think that that is what I'm really liking about this one. So this follows our main character Oakland, who accidentally joined an evil world-ending. Does that not say like my accent's coming out, I think. Mind control magic forced them to do unspeakable things. Oakland was actually saved by, I think, the heroes or a guild, and they end up going to this remote village where they are trying to pretty much live under the radar. They don't want people to know about them, but there's a no-nonsense ghost snake granny who lives in Oakland's house that has other ideas. As she coaxes Oakland out of their shell and back into the world, they find companionship, a grumpy horse, a very good dog, friendship, a local bard, and a magical baker who should just kiss already, and a tentative romance, a paladin librarian who makes Oakland's heart come alive for the first time in ages. This just sounds like a perfect, cozy fantasy. It's a beautiful book. And finally, getting down to the last question, which are what are the books that I really want to get to at the end of this year? And I have actually 4 of them that I would really like to get to. And the first book that I need to read by the end of the year is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is the first book in the Greenbone saga. This is pretty much The Godfather meets fantasy, and these warring clans, or at least these warring households, which I'm very interested in. And then another series that I think I want to start before the end of this year is the Farseer trilogy. This is The Assassin's Apprentice. This is by Robin Hobb. This is an epic fantasy. I've heard amazing things about Robin Hobb, but this one follows our main character Fitz, who is the bastard son of the noble Prince Chivalry. He was raised in the shadows of the royal court of his father's gruff stableman, and Fitz is treated as an outcast by the royalty except the devious King Shrewd, who has him secretly tutored in the arts of assassin. And so from my understanding, Robin Hobb isn't really nice to her characters, and I've heard that our main character Fitz goes through a lot of emotional damage, and that it kind of gets better as the books go on. I do want to get to this one, and if I enjoy this, get to the rest of the trilogy at some point. And then of course another book that I would really like to get to before the end of the year is Empire of the Damned. This is the second book to Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. This is a bloody, gruesome, holy grail of a story about vampires and the last humans and saints and what you would do to survive in a very dark world. Very interesting characters. Jay Kristoff is another author who isn't nice to his characters. And then finally, a book that I would really like to get to before the end of this year is another first book in a series, and that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I mean, not much to say about this one. This one is very popular in the booktube world, book talk world, bookstagram world. I mean, this is just a very popular series in general. So pretty much this is Trials but in space, and there's revolution and a lot of crazy things. I've also heard Pierce Brown is not the kindest to his characters because apparently I like to torture myself with authors that like to torture their characters. Who knows? So definitely a few book series that I would like to start before the end of the year, and a few book series that I want to continue. There you have it. There's like pretty much our mid-year catch up for my favorite books, my least favorite books, some of the really good sequels that I've read, and books that I would really like to read towards the end of the year. If there are any books that you're really excited to read this year or to get this year, definitely let me know in the comments below. If you like videos like this or like my videos in general, definitely subscribe to my channel. I will see you in my next video. Bye!